Welcome, everyone, to the Ad. Podcast. My guest today is Alfredo Muñoz, and Alfredo is an enterprise architect and banking transformation expert with more than 25 years of experience in large-scale banking transformations in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and I met Alfredo through, we were at a conference together back in the fall, November of 2022. And I've been, because of some clients that Kalele has had over the past few years, we have growing interest in Bion. And Alfredo is involved in Bion, and he's working now at IBM in the Global Center for Excellence and for banking and financial markets with IBM. So we're going to talk a bit today about transformation, modernization of banks, and we'll talk some about Bion. So welcome to the podcast, Alfredo.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here. It's very nice to talk to you.
Yeah, and I have to say, folks, you're going to see you'll recognize from the interview that Alfredo has encyclopedic knowledge of banking, technology and banking. And he's shaking his head no, but actually I was just amazed by my conversation with him. And so I hope that you get to learn about Alfredo. And he's a nice guy too. So, besides being really good at what he does, he's a very nice guy. So thanks for joining us. So, I guess that there are just so many companies, organizations who are in need of transformation, modernization, but I think maybe the most desperate industry that I have encountered is the banking industry. They're largely working with code bases that are probably 50 years old or more, and some of them not quite so old, but there's a lot of debt in those code bases. And so let's get Alfredo's opinion. So why do banks need to modernize their core systems?
Well, basically because, as you say, they are using the same system for 50 years, right? So within back 50 years, we only have branches, and the bank were completely different. So the core system they are using now, they were developed to support accounts, to have a record of accounts, and to support the branches. Yes, a long time ago, we started to digitalize the world, and we started to include this to develop these websites, mobile, and they still are using the core system that were developed for the branches. So it's like if we were now traveling in the trains that we have 20 or 30 years ago. Doesn't make sense, right? Or if we were flying in the same planes, we were traveling 50 years ago. Yeah. And the thing is now the banks are not like were in the past, right? Now the bank they want to open up, to different channels, to ecosystems. They want to integrate themselves in the daily activities of the customer, to have a better interaction with them. And now they also want to adopt new technologies, right? So and the cloud, microservices, everything. So they want to do everything, and obviously they have a problem with the core banking system because they are very, very complex. They had become very complex. They are not. They had become, because in 50 years you can do too many things with them. And now it's very difficult to modify. They are critical systems, so the system, if they fail, the bank stops and the country stops, and then you go to the newspaper. So it's really a challenge what they have.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy that you give about how we travel. If we drive a 50-year-old car, it's a classic, right? And it's probably a classic, and we take really good care of it. But that's far different from the situation with banks, and we don't usually fly in 50-year-old airplanes. And yeah, really good point. And I think another thing, just to talk a little bit more about your experience. So you were building banking systems in COBOL before you were doing this, right? So you have a lot of experience here. So you've seen it, you've lived it inside. You're not just like a newbie coming in saying, "Hey, banks, you got all these problems." You know what it's like in there.
Yes. I always make the joke with this because I started developing a COBOL system for banking. I spent almost 10 years, and then I moved companies, and then they asked me to look the way to modernize, to change them, right, and to destroy them. Because basically what we want to do is to break into pieces. Right? So I have been in the both sides, right? I have seen all, it's more than 25 years now of evolution, of addressing how we can make this happen. And this proved that this is being challenged. I had been in the same bank different times with different teams looking for the same purpose, right? How we can modernize the core. What we have seen at the end, what they have been doing is adding layers, right? They never went to the problem, right? They started adding layers. It was easier. I will say it was easier to paint the wall in different layers, no, that go to scratch the wall, right? So and this, it was less risky, right? I understand, but this has produced a lot of complexity, a lot of, and so now the snowball is bigger and bigger and becoming more complicated. And they have this problem of time to market that they always complain on, that they stay a long time to deliver any change.
I mean, I don't know every company what they face, but I have spoken to a lot of companies that maybe they can release once or twice a year. Even once a year sometimes is even really challenging because, you know, they touch something here and it breaks something over there, and it's very difficult to. So even the thought of modernization is like a big deal, right? It's not just like anybody else faces with modernization.
Yeah, but it's a problem because they are now competing with other companies with digital natives that they are very quick.
Right.
I have seen cases that they were not able to launch a product in time, and this means losing a lot of money because someone else is doing, right.
Yeah.
Especially during the financial crisis, right? That they were some special product that was sponsored by the governments or by the central banks, and if you were not on time to deploy the products, so the products someone else could do. And now it's becoming more complicated because they are really starting to compete, especially in the customer interaction. That is where the real money is. They are competing with companies that are very, very quick because they don't have this background.
Yeah, and well, I mean, just to name a few, there's Nubank, right, which is established in Brazil. There's Monzo Bank, which is in, I think they're somewhere in is it Holland? I think they are Netherlands, something like that. And so yeah, these companies are just moving really fast, right? And it's like any disrupting company that a disruptor is just moving faster than everybody else. Now, I do want to say one interesting thing, right? Some banks really wanted to get on cryptocurrency, and their slowness may have saved them from that mistake, right? So, I mean, I don't know how you feel about crypto, but there was this, 2022 was the huge crypto meltdown, and maybe their slowness saved them from spending a lot of unnecessary money, although maybe some still have that as a goal to reach. I don't know what your experience is with that.
I have not worked a lot with crypto, but I think it will come. It will come because at the end is everything that is disintermediate will be well accepted by everybody, no? Because at the end is anything that removes frictions and dependencies between the parties and provide transparency. It will help. I think the technology will be used, will be successful. Another thing is to create currencies that at the end is like a selling a bond or selling an instrument, a financial instrument. You are more selling something that is intangible. So, and I am not very expert in crypto. I don't have to work a lot in that.
Well, I'm not either, but we do want the transparency to be from the beginning and not after years when the transparency results in someone being arrested for, fraud and things like that. I mean, with a lot of money lost. Now, hopefully banks that get involved in that are, well established enough to know what regulations are and not, cause those kinds of situations. But when these sort of startups are involved and everybody's just like, frenzied to buy and get in on the I guess bandwagon or something, it can be quite risky, if not catastrophic. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that the cryptocurrency that are going to work are the ones that are issued by the central banks and the authorities, not the normal bank, because at the end you say you don't have enough control or transparency. And actually, in the moment that China started to say that they will not allow it, is where everything started to to collapse a little bit, because at the end everything was being done there. And they say, if we are not going to be able to use in one of the biggest economy, what's the purpose, right? I know this. I say it's not my area of expertise.
No, but you're sort of on the ground, so to speak, and had a lot of discussions. So it's good to know your experience from the standpoint of what you've seen. So now, one of our main topics is to get back to discussion of Bion. And the reason that I found out about you is because my interest in Bion actually is pretty much always going to overlap with domain-driven design. And you have, I don't know if it's only one blog post or multiple ones about domain-driven design and how Bion can be used with domain-driven design. I thought that was very cool. And then I got, found out that we were going to be at the same conference, and that was even way cooler. And so how is it that Bion is important in modernization? Why is it important for banks, and how will the Bion standard help banks in modernization?
I think the most important aspect of Bion for the banks is that it's kind of authority, because it's perceived like a standard that is made by a lot of institutions. So people are looking at that and they are believing what Bion is telling you. And what they are telling the bank is what we already knew and what you already know, because it was that you have to move. You cannot consider a bank like a big, just a single company. A bank is something very complicated. It's made of a lot of people, groups into units with different responsibilities, different purpose, different objectives, and they collaborate to each other for a global purpose. But you have to recognize that these are complex organizations. So the applications, that the system that support this organization have to align to this organization. You have to work by domain. And this is completely different to the core system, to the traditional banking system the core banking were built for a bank that was different. It is considered a bank like a whole. Processes are end-to-end, very process-oriented. People are connected and pulled into the processes, right? Not the processes don't adapt to how the people do business. And Bion is the opposite. Bion is telling you, you have to structure your application in something we call service domain. And this has to be aligned to the way you do business. You will structure things in sales and services, in processing, in back office operations, in compliance, in risk. And the message is perfect, because this is what they have to do. And because now it comes from kind of authority that the standard is helping them to start to understand this important change. Because at the end, the problem of the change is the resistance to change. So, and when you have been working with an approach, with the architectural style for so many years, moving to a new one is very different. But if someone from outside with authorities tell you that, you are kind of forced at least to consider that. And I have a very good example now of my customer that he wanted to use Bion, right? But Bion is really not used in that country in particular. But the reason was, look, if I told my people that we need to modernize this, it was a core banking modernization, they will do something similar. Probably they will replace the COBOL with Java, some interfaces with APIs, but the structure will be the same because this is what they know to do. But if I tell them that they have to follow Bion, they have to think. They have to reconsider, they have to reinvent themselves, they have to really challenge what they know. And it will be more difficult, but at the end, the result should be better, right? And I think it was very smart in that. And I think this is the value of Bion. Bion is really, I don't really know if when they created Bion, they thought about domain-driven design, but they are very well aligned. I think it's important. It's very, for me, it's very useful. It's just very useful. Very useful because it helps to industrialize or instrumentalize this transformation.
So let's say that, for example, internally a bank refers to the customer account as deposits because it's mainly dealing with deposits. What's interesting about Bion in the naming aspect and giving us a language, in essence, a language to use, is that what I think in Bion it's called current account, right? Even if internally, and I think there are a lot of banks that call this subsystem is called deposits. But if you have a conversation with someone with this sort of banking expertise and you say current account, then people know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. No, the reality is that if you see the bank, any bank in the world, the products are always the same. So obviously there are variations in the different regions and characteristics, a different way to calculate the interest, or especially how the regulation, or they have to report to regulator. But the products are the same everywhere. And what is different is how you interact with the customer, right? How you sell, how you serve this product. So Bion address this very well, right? Separate very clearly what you are selling, and how you are selling, and how you are servicing your customer. I always say the same. I always give the same example. Sorry, but I think it's good. When you go to buy a car, you don't go to the factory. You go to the shop, and then you have the catalog. You choose the car, the characteristics, and then they send the contract to the factory, and they make the car. In the bank, it's not like this. In the bank, the processes are end to end. So I have an application that covers from when I open the account to all the way down, right? So it's not the way the customer is expecting to interact with the bank. I don't expect to have different experiences, different processes, because I have different products. No, I have financial services, and financial services can be to save money, to borrow money, to make some investments. I don't care. I want a simple and transparent experience, right? And this is why this core banking system that are very product-oriented cannot support very well. And this is where Bions provide a completely different model, right? Another aspect of very important Bion is this separation of what is sales and service. We also call distribution capabilities from the processing, right? Because now I want to be able to sell my product through other channels, through partners, through fintech, or I want to include services from fintech into my own processes. So if I want to open up and to have these many-to-many relationships, I need to break these processes in half, right? And separate what is interaction and what is processing. And again, Bion is very good a reference to do that. They have a very good vision.
Yeah, so thinking about Bion now, so some people, we've sort of touched on what Bion is, but Bion kind of like starts at this high level and sort of drills in, and finally you get to a point where you have sort of the idea of at least a subdomain or a problem space domain, such as current account. Current account may actually be a singular subdomain, and maybe even a singular bounded context. That's maybe getting too close to implementation, but just to make a point, these areas are they're defining the lowest level, I guess, maybe business capabilities that you would have is maybe a good way to look at it. But I think the naming of it is also important, just the areas, right? So do you mind just like starting from the top? And I hate to put you on the spot because there are some details, but it's like sort of like 4 main levels, right? So
Yeah.
You want to talk about those?
Yeah. So Bion breaks the problem. Let's say the problem is how I structure my banking applications into small building blocks. They call it service domain. Right? And then this service domain and group are grouped in business domain and business area that are more from the standard point of view is a way to group things together so they are easy to communicate. But from
and that's the step up. So service domain is not the lowest level, but lowest sort of what you would implement, and then you take the step up to the business.
So we need to understand what is the origin of Bion, because Bion is it's probably 10 years ago, because I remember I was in China when I started working with that, and this was a long time ago. And the purpose of Bion was very simple, right? They wanted to create a standard so that the software vendor, the ISPs, the service provider like IBM or consulting firm or any other consulting firm, and the banks, if they stick to this standard, the integration of the different pieces they were providing was going to be more easier, because the cost of integration of any solution in the bank is always very, very big, because every bank is different. Every landscape in the bank is completely different. So they thought, okay, let's create a standard. Let's structure the banking systems into components. Let's define what is the scope and the responsibilities of the different component, right? And then we will the service, the solutions provider, the commercial solutions, the software as a service, they will align to that, and they will provide a solution for this service domain specifically. And so we can compose things easily. And it was the purpose. Then it had evolved. Because then we started to talk about APIs, open banking, and many things. But this was the purpose, and it was very good, right? Because now if I have to build my new system, I can choose, I can compose, and I can choose the different pieces and put them together. And it doesn't mean that the bank landscape is going to be like the one in Bion, but the pieces will be aligned to this service domain. But then, obviously, a service domain can be big, can be smaller, bigger, but at the end, it's not going to be isolated. You are going to have, you say, example, current accounts, but I think when you look at current account, you don't solve current account with one component. Current account, you are doing too many things. So you will have a number of service domains together, and you have to group them in a business domain that is the upper layer. And this is very important from governance point of view, because this is these people. You will have different teams responsible for these applications, but they will share expertise. They will share the semantic. They will share the SMEs, the experts, and this is very important. So it's one of the things we have to do is to reorganize the service domain into business domain that are aligned to how the bank is organized. And then you have the upper layer is the business area, right? Business areas is just to say, okay, look, this service domain belongs to the distribution, or this service domain belongs to the operations. What is the positions in the value chain? And this is also important, right? Because solutions, service domain that are in the distribution, where you are interacting with the customer, you have a different imperative. When you are developing or you are looking for a solution, in this area, you are looking for a good experience, right? Something that can be changed very frequently, because I have to keep my customer engaged. If I am looking in the operations, I have to find solutions that are very efficient, because in operations, what I want to do is the zero back office. I want to be very efficient. I want to have a very quick processing, straight through processing, right? So there are different imperatives, so you should focus on different problems. And this is, but mostly the business areas is more just to positions and to communicate where each of the capabilities reside. But for me, the business domain are very important because it's how you really align to the organization. How you really make the things align to the organization so you avoid frictions. It's very difficult to work when you have a lot of stakeholders, when you have requirements for different sources. It's better to have one single source of requirement, right? To have a clear business owner. And this is where the business domain comes into.
So yeah, some of the service domains are probably more like, or maybe even several of them, or many are more like a problem space domain. So you could have, a number of subdomains inside those in terms of, how you would actually, create boundaries around it. So, but if you thought of, for example, current account as a service, right? If you thought of it as a service, you're going to say like have, in terms of DDD, an open host service around current account. And while that could, sort of dispatch to different subdomains a la bounded context internally, you still, have that kind of like segregation of this is a major part of the business.
Yeah. So what this at the beginning is difficult to understand in Bion, and it's what people make a lot of mistake of misinterpretation. Is if you are used to core banking traditional system, core banking systems, you think in an application for current account, right? If the application for current accounts, you will start opening the account, right? And then you will have a lot of business rules. You have to assign to check the customer. You have to assign the customer to the contract. Then you have to open the account. Then you start getting debits and credits, and you start creating statements. You do a lot of things, and everything is current accounts. So when people look at Bion at the beginning and they see this small service domain current account, they think everything is there. But when you look at the service domain, and there are 19, so they classify the service domain by functional patterns. And they tell you the current account have a fulfillment patterns. And what does it mean? It means this component is responsible to fulfill the obligation of a contract. So everything that happens before you sign your contract with the bank is not there. You have to look for somewhere else, right? You have to look in the sales and distribution. The only thing you are doing in the current account is you have the ledger, you have the credits, you have the debits, you are calculating interest, and you are calculating fees and generating some statements. Anything else is not fulfillment of your obligation of the contract. And this is how you start to break things down, right? And this is one of the important. It's difficult to find at the beginning to understand this, not because people used to think everything is there. No, it's not there. Why? Because I don't have current accounts anywhere else. If I look at distribution, I have customers. I have products, but I don't have current accounts because this is in the processing. This is the product itself. And this simplifies things a lot. No? When you started to look at this way in Bion, you understand how things can be simplified, right? Because everything that I am doing in current accounts, I am also doing in loans, I am doing in credit cards. So if I stick only to my layer and I separate the rest, I have a lot of reusability and a lot of simplification. But also you are right. At the end, it creates also a semantic, right? It's a common understanding of when we are talking. Yeah, usually this is helping. But still people have to learn the semantics in the other layers because most of the people understand what is a current account, but most of the people will not understand what is a customer offer in the context of the bank.
Yeah, because if you look at another service domain, it does deal with credit cards, right? Even though for the customer, they want, to know everything in one place. So, it's not like you look under current account and everything's there.
Yes. The same credit card, what is responsible? Credit card responsibility is to manage a contract. You have a credit line. With the credit card, you spend money, and then you have the operation with the credit card, and you have the statements every month. And that's all. But the risk analysis you have to pass before you get the car is not there. But it was before, no? And this is the difference. It was in the old systems. But now in Bion it's not there. It's only the processing. And you say, you want to see all my positions in the BIAN. You have a service domain for that. You have the customer, product, and services where you have everything consolidated. And banks have been doing that now for years. But the way they have done is through replication of data, through adding additional layers. Because I still have the same information in my core system, but now I am aggregating together in a different layer so I can expose to my customer and give them the overall view. But this is obviously because this is not the structure internally well, no? You are creating a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of dependencies and complexity that is what at the end is costing a lot of money to them.
Yeah, I think actually what you were describing would be best solved with data mesh kind of thing, where you make this aggregatable data available, but I guess with data mesh, technically you can replicate to some extent, but we all know that that's, replicating a lot can be quite, not only inefficient, but even, who owns the data at some point, right? You don't know who owns it. Yeah, go ahead.
But this is very, very, very good conversation, right? And also Bion have an important work to do in this area, no? Because when you look at Bion, you don't see core processes and analytical processes. But the banks are built in core processes, and then you have a data architecture where you have the data warehouse, data pools, and now they want to have data mesh. And I say, why? Why? So why I need to have these core systems and the data systems? Because I have everything duplicated. I have customer in the core, customer in the analytics. I have current accounts in my core. I have current accounts in my data warehouse. They are the same. It's the same information. It's the same domain. So now when they start to talk about data mesh, I say, yes, data mesh. Data mesh is a principle that tells you that each of your service domain have to provide the data, have to make the data consumable. It's not telling you that this data have to be in another technical platforms. Is when you modernize, you design for data mesh, and when you have a service that is part of a business process, and this service is managed data that have to be public, that have to be exposed, right, and consumable. So the concept of data mesh links and very well with Bion. It goes very well with the type of architecture we are talking about. Right? But from a technical point of view or from a practical point of view, I think the thinking has to evolve a little bit and get rid of this historical separation between core systems and analytical systems that is just a historical decision because of the technological constraints we have in the moment, no, some years ago. But for me, it doesn't make sense then anymore.
Yeah, and I think, the argument from data mesh side of things is, well, the data lakes and the data warehouses, that basically what happens is a team is assigned to those, and there ends up being a big backlog for changes that, like, okay, we now want this report and we want this data, and just trying to keep up with all the change requests, enhancements, whatever you want to call them, becomes very difficult. And the data ends up not ultimately being in a shape that is easily aggregatable, right? So they're always changing the sort of aggregations, whereas if you have data that's consumable in a sort of smaller place, then you aggregate it in whatever way you want.
No, I love the concept because obviously the old model, where I have a team responsible for entire data architecture, it was crazy, right? Because so the guy that knows about loans is in loans. The guy that knows about the investment accounts is in investments, in developing the operational system for investments. And then you put a guy that they are very smart, but they don't know about the business. So you have a lot of interaction. You have a lot of dependencies between the teams. And obviously you have a very big backlog because to do anything is very difficult. And now they say, yes, let's separate them into a specialized group. Again, they will not be the SMEs. They will not be the domain experts. The domain expert will be still in the core processes, in the operational processes. So why don't merge them together? Because at the end, you are going to have a team that is responsible for the customer information in the data mesh and a team that is going to be responsible for the customer management system. It's the same customer. Let's put them together, right? So I think this is going to be the future. I think, but the resistance to change is still very strong. Obviously, there are responsible in the bank, the responsible of the data architecture, responsible of the core processes. They don't talk to each other too much, so there will be a lot of resistance to change. But I think this is the way to go, and this is the way to go to a domain-driven approach. Is you work by domain, you don't work by technical capabilities.
Yeah, and I think maybe a very important message with that is domain events are extremely important, right? If you have the domain events, then ETL isn't really, I don't know, I don't want to say not necessary, but maybe you want to think of it as ETL because you're going to read a stream of events from someplace. But if you're projecting, maybe even make the domain events available as one part of a service, that has a data mesh, and then you also project views from that. And now you can simply project new views very readily by reinterpreting the events and projecting them in a different way. And as you said, then the expertise remains in the service domain, right? Or the business part of the bank, and whoever has the expertise with that specific data is the one who should be making the decisions about, how best to present it, or at least it can be handled, right? Like the team can deal with it instead of, as you said, one team trying to deal with dozens or hundreds of different, business capabilities.
Yeah. At the end, what is one of the traditional problems is the data governance. You have heard about data governance, right? And the origin of data governance problems is that you have the same data in different places under the responsibility of different teams. And each of them, at the end, they are persons, they understand differently, they have different understanding, they have different assumptions. And the data you have in one platform is not the same you have in the other one. And then the regulator comes into and say, okay, what are you doing? You are giving the wrong information to the customer because in the other system you have, and then you have a problem. So let's solve the problem. Don't distribute your data. Keep them together. No? And what you say about the events, streaming, I think it's a technology change, very important, mostly because it makes the data available immediately instead of having to wait to have a file at the end of the day, right? But I think this is it's a technological revolution. I will say the file is just a sequence, it's a collection of events put together and delayed and deliver it with delays. No? At the end, what you are doing with the file is to do that. No? Obviously, it will change the way we manage data through events. It's going to change how this data can be used in real time. That is the biggest problem now, that they are taking decisions based on information from the previous day in the best of the cases.
Yeah. And I think, so we had this little conversation about events, the definition of events within Bion, right? So, and I think there's a bit of challenge there, trying to get, agreement or just the correct way of designing events. What have you seen in that?
Yes, the thing is, I think Bion have started to work in this event perspective recently, so this is still some way to go, right? I think in my because everybody understands APIs, right? And say, look, APIs is just a way you expose your capabilities and your data, right? Now I know solutions, right? That they have APIs, and these APIs are based on events. So if I am posting, for example, a payment, I am sending an event, I am not calling an API, but I am asking the payment to process a payment, the payment system to process a payment. So I say, what is the difference between calling an API or sending an event? Nothing. It's just you are downstream or you are upstream. That's all. Downstream, upstream. This is the difference. So for me, APIs and events are different technical implementation of the thing. You can consume data calling an APIs. You can consume the same data listening to an event queue. Okay, so you are downstream in this case. And the thing is, I think that everything will have to go to the same side, right? Will go converse. So now in Bion, you have this control record. Control record define the structure of your service domain. So, for example, you have a customer party directory where you have a control record that there is a directory entry for this party and with a lot of properties, the financial information, the names, the address of this customer. So now I have to expose my data. I have to provide an API. So the structure of the API is the structure of your resources. Your resources are your control records. So you will have an API that is customer ID financial information of customer ID addresses. So and then I will have an event. If my address changes, I will have an event that is customer ID address change, event change for this customer address. It's the same. It's the same structure. The structure is given by your control record. I think there will be an evolution about that, but it's not. I mean, there's a lot of work in progress in the standard in this sense, and now they are managing separately. Right, the one thing, the API with still a lot of connections to web services and the way this. I think that they need to have a converge. They have to converge the two lines of work. The APIs and the events have to be managed like from a business point of view. You have to say, okay, this is a business interface, and it's defined by your control record. And now you have two implementations, or three, or four, because tomorrow we have different type of interfaces. You use it. It's just technology. What is important is from the business point of view. What is your interface? What is the data you are providing, and what are the services you are exposing, right?
Yeah, and interesting that you bring up API too. I'd want to ask the next sort of like main question, but this is a really interesting sort of, I guess, decomposition of the topic. So you mentioned, I think you're the one who told me that the API, so you can go to bion.org, I guess it is, and
yes.
and you can find the open API specs online for these different service domains. But I think you said that the API, open API specs are not actually officially part of Bion, right? Is that true? Or maybe I did. Maybe you didn't tell me that. Maybe it's someone else.
If you ask me, I think so.
Okay.
But you cannot take my word for granted. I am not. But I know that the API, the semantic API, was an initiative was created in one moment of time where we started to work about open banking and people were starting to ask about API. Because before, I said the standard was for integration of applications, of how so they started to work in this line with the APIs. And at the end, it was like a external collaboration of people that wanted to provide some assets to the standard. And working in some bank, in some project, they start to create and publish so it was like an asset, like a reference, but it was not part of the standard. Well, I don't know if now it is considered as part of the standard. I see. I don't think so. The problem with APIs is if you design the APIs 6 years ago or 7 years ago, it will be web services. And now they are API. And they are different because REST services should be resource-oriented. Web services was more based on operations. So if you look at Bion now with this service operation and the actual action terms, it looks like more in the web services part, right? And now we have these REST APIs, but now we are going to have GraphQL, and then we are going to have more. And this going to we should be able to adapt to that pretty quick. So if I publish APIs, yeah, it's an asset. It's helped me to accelerate. But I should not rely. So for me, it's very important the principle of domain-driven design, the hexagonal architecture. One thing is your core domain, your data, your commands, your logic. And another thing is how you expose this, because you have to be able to quickly change how you expose and to adopt new technologies without impacting your core. This application of the bank have to last for 20 years. If you develop application around API, and in 5 years they don't want REST API anymore, what are you going to do? Because this application have to last for another 15 years. So this is why I don't really, I value the work, and you can use like a reference. It's always like a best practice because it was created by other people working in the same problem. but I don't usually use the semantic API. And this is another problem for me, and it's about the language, about the semantic. So the Bion, the internal definitions of the object is based on the ISO the 20022. That is the standard for payments, because it was created by Swift for payments. And now they are extending the standard to define the different service domain, even if they are not in the payment domain. And this is good because it creates a common language for all the participants in Bion. But the participants in Bions are architects, are people that knows about the standard, that knows about the ISO. So it creates a common language for them to define, to have common definitions. But now you go to the bank, right? A bank don't speak ISO. The bank speak the language they have in Spain or the language they use in UK or in US, right? They don't speak ISO, so don't push the standard because they will not understand. The first principle of an API is to be consumable. And the way to be consumable is to talk your semantic, the language your people understand, right? So I say, why you are going to use this? You have 80% of the fields, of the attributes, you will not use them because they are useless for you. And people will not understand this. So you are going to train a lot of people in that? Don't go crazy. Use your language. This is the best way to make things easy to consume. But this is my opinion. There are a lot of people that think differently, right?
Well, I think your opinion is quite valuable, and this is sort of I think it's the conversation that I recollect about what you were telling me about the API, and it makes or open API specs, and it makes perfect sense actually. So now I just wanted to mention that Microsoft I think it was just this past week announced the release of a language called CADL, CADL, and apparently I haven't had a chance to really dive into it, but apparently if you were to write an open API spec and then rewrite it in CADL would have 1/10 the number of lines, and then you can generate the open API spec from it. Now, why couldn't you also generate gRPC, essentially, like this is the sort of thing I think that's quite important for what you're saying right now. You can take the open API specs from Bion and learn what you can from them, but at the same time, you use CADL, let's say, to define this, and then have a forward generator for whatever it is that you're actually using, or multiple ones, right? Maybe you do want gRPC, maybe you want REST, maybe you want pure messaging, right? So I completely agree with you. So I always think, are we going to code in 20 years? Some people, yes, we will have developers coding tools, but I don't expect people in the bank to develop applications in 20 years or 30 years. I don't know, but these things evolve very quickly, right? I don't expect the machines will code themselves. So I have to develop business logic, business capabilities, business definitions, right? I have to define business, and then I need to live to use technology to generate, you say, what is the type of interface I want to generate? I don't care. Still the machines are not going to do is to create this business logic, right? So we don't have to develop application. We have to develop business logic, and then we need to use tools to create the software. Right? Because we have talked about this, that I am very supportive of low-code solutions when the low-code solutions have some characteristics, because this is the future. Low-code solutions means little coding, but this also means a lot of standardization. Is easy to maintain, because one of the problems of the system in the bank is they have to be maintainable because they have to last for 20 years. This is another different topic, no? But it was very funny when all the banks were trying to do like Spotify. No? If Spotify, remember, it was very trendy, no? Because they have this method, this stripe, this squads, and a different way to develop. And yes, fantastic. But for the speed where
Spotify can modify things. It's not the same like a bank. So you can, bank, an application in the bank has to last for 20 years, for 30 years, for 50 years, because the way I manage a deposit is the way I manage a deposit. It's not going to change. What is going to change is how I serve to my customer. So whatever I do in this critical system have to be very easy to maintain. And how I do this, because in COBOL is very easy, because it's English. But if I do in Java, it's not so easy. So low code, repeatability, standardization is key if we want to develop at scale this type of modern system for the banking. And you say, Microsoft is proving my point a little bit. No, yes, this is a way to go.
Yeah, excellent. And I'll tell you, we could just keep sort of going down this trail, because I think we spoke before. The first time we met I think we may have spoken for 2 hours or something. And I almost everything that you say reminds me of something else that you said. But let's get back to maybe one of the main questions. Okay, here's this, what sounds maybe a little bit like a panacea for, banking definitions, but how is Bion actually being adopted in banks? Like, is it widespread in banks or somewhat limited, and why?
I cannot speak for every bank in the world, right? But my experience is everybody's interested, everybody's looking at that. Actual work is not, I don't see too much. So I have seen a lot of work around APIs. So this, during the last year, we have been talking about API, and I say, yes, this API is like an evolution of the web services. I have web services, now I have API. Nothing changed. So, but they say, no, I want to develop my APIs based on Bion. I have to structure based on Bion. Okay, and there's a lot of work around that. So there's a lot of work around that and about the integration of the core system with creating this intermediate layer for integration based on Bion. So there's some work about that. Real transformations based on Bion, not. And probably the reason is because there is not a lot of business core banking transformations. Because Bion is not telling you use Bion for this piece. No, it's telling you use Bion to structure your bank, right? And your process is end-to-end, not just to develop this layer of the architecture. So I think there is a lot of work to do in the Bion adoption. And now but we have seen huge increment in interest and practitioner and people getting certifications. I have been working for 10 years with Bion. I have seen how this is moving, and the number of people that are asking things are interesting and are learning how to work with Bion. So I think it will be a matter of time since we have we can see a good reference of really a good transformation based on Bion, but actual transformation, or really solving the problem of the core, and these legacies, this monolith.
Yeah, my experience with conversations about Bion, like you said, is there are people who are in banking are just technologists are quite excited about it, but they don't know what to do next, right? They read about it, they look at the models, it's all very interesting, but they're just sort of saying like, okay, now what? How do we start with it? What do we do? Do you have any answers for that? Like how they could possibly approach it?
Yeah, because I think they see in Bion the problem of the solution of the problem of time to market. Right? They say, yes, if I am able to structure in this service domain, and they think they are loosely coupled. This is another topic. I will solve my problem of time to market. So I don't have to test all my core banking system when I modify one attribute in a table. But I think they have to realize that the Bion will succeed, and they will be able to do Bion-driven transformation when they align to the business. And they are not doing that. So you say they are looking from the technical point of view to solve a technical problem. And the technical problem is not Bion. The technical problem is solved with domain-driven design and different architectural styles. You can solve the technical problem without adopting Bion. Adopting Bion is aligning your systems to what your business is asking for. Do your business work? Because your business is not doing business the way your core system are supporting this business. And this is the important thing on Bion. The technical problem is solved with more domain-driven design, better, more events, more more synchronization of data, and not real-time interaction. This is how we are going to solve the problem of the telco market. Not with BIAN, right? Obviously, BIAN helps, but BIAN is useful for the orders, to align these new systems to what your business really needs.
Okay, good. So, now, of course, banks, a lot of large organizations are looking to, enable hyperscale in the cloud. And I guess we're shifting gears a little bit here. So let's talk about the cloud. Like, is the cloud really going to help a bank, to transform, modernize, or what are the challenges there with that? I mean, it will in some way, but maybe not in others.
Yeah. Obviously, I think cloud has a lot of value for the bank, but mostly because it's a different way to consume the technical capabilities. And so it's going to it's more efficient, and especially to the development teams and the teams, the provisioning of elements is going to be better. Will have always limitations for the bank instead of volumes and performance, because at the end, the good things about cloud is that everything is based on consuming resources and integrating everything through standards, APIs is also limitations for some kind of processes. So this is why I see there's a lot of struggling, when they're trying to move workloads to cloud, because I'm not sure that everything is going to be cloud in the future. I'm not sure if this makes sense. And there are some indicators in the market. There are big companies that have been working in cloud for a long time, and they are going back to say, look, the way the volume of data is growing, the way the needs of data and processing capabilities to apply this artificial intelligence is so huge that the cloud is not the way to do it, because it doesn't have the technical characteristic for that. So they are start developing this, again, going back to this big computer or mega or data center, with a lot of capacity. And probably it's going to be this way. I don't think that everything we will move everything to cloud. But what is clear is there is huge opportunities for cloud, especially in the upper layer, in this layer where I will implement my business services for interaction, my processes, my connection to the ecosystem, where I am going to have my account opening, when I'm going to have my customer servicing, for sure, because it's very efficient. And there's something very good of cloud, I say. It's a collateral aspect, but I think it's very good. That because you have limitations, you have constraint, you have to separate things into component, into container, and the container will talk through APIs and not directly. So you have to design better, because something you can do in a mainframe, that is, you can do whatever you want. This will run quick. If you do this in cloud, you cannot. So you have to think, and you have to design better, and you have to apply better principles, and you have to avoid chatting between different components. So a good consequence of using cloud is the designs are going to be better, or they will not be, or it will not work.
Yeah, it is amazing how mainframe is still very, very top performing architecture, and some people think, mainframe, wow, that's so old, and cloud uses commodity servers. Yep, it uses commodity servers, and the Z, mainframe, IBM's mainframe is not commodity stuff. It's really specialized. So
yeah, very specialized. No, the thing is, because for me the problem with the mainframe is not really the mainframe itself. Is the good advantages of mainframe is the enemy, because everything is so easy to do that you create this monster, right? Because you can. I started to work a long time ago, and I just fresh from the university, and I developed my products, my first program in a couple of weeks, and this product probably is in production in some bank around the world. It's very easy. So you can make mistakes, and this works. And now the consequence is, yes, everything becomes complicated, because You can do everything. Now the result is you have millions of lines of code working together. But this is not a fault of the mainframe. It's fault of how you design the application. You can do perfect DDD and deploy in mainframe. And another thing is that the COBOL, like a language, is a problem, right, in this moment, because the young people doesn't like COBOL. they think it's very old-fashioned. And it's difficult to find people that want to work with COBOL. And this is going to be a real challenge. But I say the problem is not the mainframe. The mainframe is a fantastic platform. The thing is how we are using it. Is how we. They say in the advantage in the assets is you have the problem. You have the problem because it's very easy to do everything.
Yeah, and interesting too that I caught window. I don't know where I saw this. Maybe it was in IBM News or someplace else. But where now. There's sort of this new movement to try to recruit college graduates right out of college to work in COBOL, right? Which is, I don't recall for sure, but it seems like that's relatively new. Do you see that in IBM?
No, I don't see that. I don't see that.
Oh, okay.
But I have seen, but it makes completely sense because it's not only banking. It's airlines, telecom companies. Any big company have a mainframe. Yeah. So there is still COBOL is going to be there for a long time. So if we don't have the developer, we have a problem. And here in US, they are paying a lot of money, to
and COBOL developers have now retired for the second time, right? I mean, they retired once and then they got drawn back for the money, and now they're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And
but I have seen companies, so banks with contracts with small service companies that they only have to provide these people. The work was to find these people, train them, and so they have a secure business with the bank because they were providing these people. And this, I mean, I really believe that is going to happen. We need to find people to work in COBOL because it will be there for a long time.
So we've touched on this, but sort of like an overarching set of advice. If companies that are running mainframe software, COBOL, whether it's financial companies or fintech or whatever, or other companies, what do they need to do to succeed with the cloud, and what do they need to do to succeed with Bion? Kind of as a maybe parting thought.
Well, I think they have to break a little bit from the past. I think this is the most important thing to do. Because working with Bion and working for cloud means to break with things you have been doing for many years. So I learned that data is all in one place. Right? So duplication of data was criminal because the storage was so expensive, right? We were using two digits for the years, and then we had to change everything in the 2000. Yes, we have grown to understand. We have grown to see that the core banking system or the banking system in general or the core system have online and batch, and we have seen that you have only one database. The data is only once, and you go to fetch them when you need. This doesn't work anymore because this is when you scale this design to a whole organization, this becomes too complicated, and you have too many dependencies, and then you start having problem of time to market and agility. So everything is about challenging ourselves. Any things we think things that were done in the past because valid reasons, but the thing that because they were done in the past this way doesn't mean we have to do it in the future. And working with Bion means working with this separation by technologies, moving to a domain-driven, to align more to the organizations, breaking these end-to-end processes, stop thinking in end-to-end processes. A bank is not a factory. No? A bank is not a factory. It's a lot of people doing different things. And stop thinking that you need to have a process in the middle. No, there is a lot of things we have to, because they have to stop thinking, or change the mindset. And for cloud, it's the same, right? If you think that the design patterns you are doing in the traditional system are going to work in cloud, you are going to fail. I have seen transactions with 1,000 copy COBOL calls. If you replace this with not 1,000, with 100 APIs, it will never work. So we need, they have to stop thinking on transaction logic data repository. No, the systems now are data, and the use I do with the data. Everything is so. There's a lot of changes to do, but all of these changes goes against what we have been doing for many years, and this is the biggest constraint to adopt cloud and to adopt Bion, in my humble opinion. So the fight is against resistance to change. When we fight the resistance to change, we are able to do interesting things with Bion and cloud.
Yeah, and just to sort of maybe offer a little bit of my own conversations. You mentioned before low code being quite important for the future, and I agree with that. But I have to say that I have conversations with software engineers, architects, whatever, and they see low code as like the enemy. Their response is literally, "Oh, so you're going to put me out of a job with this?" And well, look, if you wait around too long, something's going to put you out of a job, because AI, whether or not it's even 15 or 20 years from now that AI really displaces most software engineers, it doesn't matter. It seems inevitable. And I think that our jobs will, what we do will change, but the way that we use our minds for some level of subject matter expertise, whether it's software development, business capabilities, whatever, we're going to change the way we do that, but it's still going to be a thought, sort of like a knowledge worker, right? And the machines can't replace the human mind, but they can do certain things better than we can at human scale, right?
Yeah, you are right. And also, if you think that the software engineer I'm going to get out of job, you're crazy. I mean, the number of open positions there are in the market is going to grow. Is the needs of developers is going to grow, but they have to focus on developing some kind of technology. What doesn't make sense is this developer to be developing processes for a bank. Processes for the bank are very simple. So what is the value? What is the value he's going to find developing a process to calculate the interest? No, this is not value. If I were a developer, I would not like to do this. I would like to solve technical problems, not business problems. And at the end, you can solve this very easily with low-code solution. So I say, no, you are not going to solve everything with low-code, but you are going to solve 20% or 80% of the problem. And this is where we want people that knows about the business to be able to develop by themselves. I don't want to have a guy from the university that knows a lot about Python and they don't know about banking. No, I want to know people that knows about the business and they can implement or almost by themselves implement their processes and the solutions. Because we don't have enough people otherwise. We don't have enough people because this guy that tell you want me out of job, he will not work in a bank to develop a process to calculate interest. He will not.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I've been doing this a long time, as you have, and maybe even longer. Yeah, but that doesn't say anything about my abilities. It just says more about my age. But I have to say that once you have done some of these technical things once or twice, to me personally, it's just not interesting anymore. Mm-hmm. Solving the business problems is what is interesting. And even if you only, I keep on this sort of, drumbeat or whatever, that even if low code only helps replace the supporting subdomains, right? Not even the core domains. Maybe we aren't going to be able to do that for a while, but if we replace the supporting subdomains, the sort of really boring stuff that, and we do that with low code, hey, that's a win. Now we get to work on the really interesting things because we get the sort of boring things, the supporting things out of the way. And of course, we buy the generic when at all possible. So.
Yeah. But the problem is to compare peers with apples, right? You cannot compare a small company, startups that is developing a cool technology or a cool service, and you have very specialized people, very smart people doing that. And then you go to a bank and you have hundreds of thousands of people developing business processes. Yeah. They are completely different. So is this I will ask this guy, right? This is a smart guy that do this software, this fantastic work in these startups. If you go to a bank and you develop something that is cool, who is going to maintain this in 5 years? Will people understand what you have done? Because developing is nice, it's cool, no? But then someone has to solve the problems when they appear, or they have to make the changes when we have a business change. Who is going to do that if we let you do all these crazy technical new things? No, there are technology is different in the context where you apply it. No? You have to be different.
It's just a huge problem in our industry, though. The sort of purposeful, it's not even accidental complexity. It's purposeful complexity and developers just wanting to do something that sort of blows everybody else's mind. And, if you're going to go to a hackathon or something, maybe that's cool. Maybe you'll win a hackathon. But if you want to contribute to the success of a business, maybe they don't actually want to do that, But if they do, then you write readable code and, code that people can understand. Or you write readable code for a tool that's going to generate code or, whatever it happens to be. So,
There is also a risk. You consider there is also a risk in that, right? Because you say if you do something, someone is smart, when you have done something twice, you get bored, you get the next one, right? So there are people that can think they are thinking on the next steps when we are doing something. And so sometimes it's the personal purpose, right? What you are thinking about when you are developing something, you want to develop something that is a shiny object because it's going to help you in your next step. We don't want this in the bank. We don't want this. No? We want something that is going to be durable because it's what we need. So I always prevent about this type of skill. No? Be careful with this very smart guy because maybe the objectives are not aligned. It's not what we need.
Well, if you got these really smart people and you're okay with writing, like that they just churn out this really incredibly complex code that's hard to read and hard to maintain. Maybe they contribute to, some kind of, digital banking disruptor. And then they get acquired by a bank or they get acquired by, who knows, Amazon or AWS or whoever. And then the point is, there are places for developers like that, but you need someone with good balance and maturity to write stuff that, like you say, is durable, can be improved over time. So,
and there is a proof. No, there is a fact that you say. Most of the time there is the owner of the core system, right, and they're responsible of the current accounts, the loans application, and now they always have these architecture teams or engineering teams. They are dealing with innovation. They don't get well with each other because the guy that is supporting the operation of the banks, they know the risk and they know what they need. They have been doing this work for a long time. So when these guys come with these new technologies and ideas, say, yes, it's cool, but be careful because this is a bank. No? And you see, there's a lot of fights, no? A lot of tension between these two groups. One group try to do cool things that I think is very important. And the other one, they're running the bank. They are running the daily operation of the bank. So careful with that. So in our work, we always separate. We say, look, if you are doing transformation, you are doing transformations. And transformations require repeatability, standardization, tooling, and a clear way. People should know what you have to do, because this is where ensure you are going to have a quality software for many years. And now you have innovation. And the purpose of innovation is different one. Innovation is to improve the way you are doing things, or to solve a specific problem that you find in your transformation. So you have a problem in your transformation, you go to innovation, you innovate. Or you innovate and find a better way to do the transformation, you include, when you have tests that this works, you include in your transformation method. But you have to keep separated, because this is not a startup. This is not a small company. This is a company that is, most of the time, they are a critical system, and they are mission critical for the, not for the bank, for the country where they are operating. Right? So we need to understand the scale we are talking about here. And sometimes we are losing this perspective, no? When we try to do these cool things in systems that are really very delicate.
Well, I really look forward to getting to speak with you again, and let's hope we can stay in touch. Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah. No, thank you a lot for the invitation. It was really a pleasure. And I was very happy when you invited me. It's very nice. Thank you.
My pleasure.